Situated on the boundary between the Mediterranean and continental climates of the peninsula, the marshes simultaneously shelter plants adapted to different climates, which have evolved an incredible variety of adaptations both in shape and functions. Such extreme adaptations have allowed different species to colonize all corners of the aquatic environment, but they have made them vulnerable to the slightest changes in the habitat, so that these species are dramatically falling in number and even disappearing. Free-floating water plant with free roots. Like other floating plants, the frog bee adopts an interesting strategy to survive the cold winter. At the tip of its stolons it produces special shoots called hibernacules. These become so heavy with the starch reserves they have accumulated that when the mother plant dies, they sink to the bottom where the mud protects them from the frost. In spring, when they have exhausted their supplies and have become lighter, the shoots rise to the surface and colonize the pond again. It is rare everywhere due to the land reclamation and eutrophication of the water. Over the last few years, it has no longer been seen at the Fucecchio marshes. This is a perennial plant growing in strong, dense cylindrical tuft up to a meter wide. This sedge grows on the banks of ditches and canals and along pool edges. It can cover large areas, forming the characteristic association known as magnosage stands. After the Second World War, the leaves of the tufted sage were gathered for traditional weaving craft, seat covers, mats, bags, baskets, and so on. After these activities were abandoned, the plant declined, especially because of the growth of overrunning canes and reeds. The tufted sedge loses out in competition with these infesting species. The dominant species of cane and reed, given the most common and widespread plant formation found in Italian marshes. It never grows alone, and when it has reached a certain level of development, it can be distinguished by its characteristic green leaves. A very vigorous plant capable of growing in favorable and unsuitable habitats. The common reed, or cannella, as it is often called, for mat making, fodder, and bedding material for stables. An unusual and interesting floating carnivorous plant. The stems bear little assimilative capillary leaves and other longer leaves with the toothed-edged blade, divided into filiform segments. Some of the latter are transformed into bladders, which act as small traps as well as floats. The flowers emerge from the water surface to be pollinated. These plants have evolved an efficient system of catching tiny animals. The valves of the bladder open and create a difference in pressure that suck the prey inside. Then they close again. The animal is dissolved and absorbed. The round floating leaves of this plant led botanists to think that it belonged to the same family as water lilies. We now know that it is related to the gentians, and its morphological similarities with other aquatic plants is an example of evolutionary convergence. The fringed water lily is anchored to the bottom by means of a long rhizome. The leaves lie composed of 5 petals fringed round the edges. This species grows in quite shallow, still or slow-floating waters. In Italy, it only grows in a few suitable habitats. Therefore, it can be considered as very rare and protected. This free-floating graceful fern spreads out over the surface of stagnant or slow-floating fresh water. It consists of a thin horizontal stem bearing small elliptical leaves arranged equally on the two opposite sides. Their characteristic herringbone arrangement has given them their common Italian name of erba pesce, fish grass. A third leaf departs from the node of each pair of floating leaves, which takes on the shape and functions of a root. Until 40 years ago it was common to see, but today it is disappearing everywhere because of the eutrophication of water, of which it is a sensitive biological indicator. Very common plant in wetland and river areas. Along the banks of the rivers, it develops an action of consolidation of the soil, limiting damages in landslides. The wood of these plants, especially roots, has the property of not rotting. It has always been cultivated for the production of wicker, obtained from the pruning of the young branches. It is also used in agriculture to make the typical ligator. Its bark, rich in salicylic acid and tannin, was used since ancient Greek for its qualities.